On behalf of the Fern Lodge and Redwood Community Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome everyone. And we're going to start out with a few readings from the Bible. Genesis. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. And Noah did according to all the Lord commanded him. In the selfsame day entered Noah, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wives, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. They, and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. Psalms. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. And from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. Ark, safety, the idea or reflection of truth, proved to be as immortal as its principle. The understanding of spirit, destroying belief in matter. God and man coexist and eternal. Science showing that the spiritual realities of all things are created by him and exist forever. God is not moved by the breath of praise to do more than he has already done, nor can the infinite do less than bestow all good, since he is unchanging wisdom and love. We can do more for ourselves by humble, fervent petitions, but the all-loving does not grant them simply on the ground of lip service, for he already knows all. Prayer cannot change the science of being, but it tends to bring us into harmony with it. Goodness attains a demonstration of truth. A request that God will save us is not all that is required. The mere habit of pleading with the divine mind, as one pleads with a human being, perpetuates the belief in God as humanly circumscribed, an error which impedes spiritual growth. God is love. Can we ask him to be more? God is intelligence. Can we inform the infinite mind of anything he does not already comprehend? Do we expect to change perfection? Shall we plead for more at the open fount, which is pouring forth more than we accept? And finally, from First Church of Christ Zionists and Miscellany. Beloved Christian Zionists, keep your minds so filled with truth and love that sin, disease, and death cannot enter them. It is plain that nothing can be added to the mind already full. There is no door through which evil can enter, and no space for evil to fill in a mind filled with goodness. Good thoughts are an impervious armor. Clad therewith, you are completely shielded from the attacks of error of every sort. And not only yourselves are safe, but all whom your thoughts rest upon are thereby benefited. And now we're going to hear from the administrator, George Strong.
Thank you, Betsy. That was delightful. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce to you some new friends of yours. Maybe you don't know all of them, but the Fern Lodge Board of Directors, Betsy and Numa, who give this wonderful readings. Annalisa Kronman, can you just stand up and say hi? Tom Port. Joel Carico. Is Jenny here? Two of our members couldn't make it today, Jenny Pratt and Trinko Wasik. I am George Strong. Thank you for the introduction. I'd also like to introduce three of my dear friends and compatriots, the executive directors at three other Northern California Christian Science nursing facilities. Roseanne Zwick at Olive Glen. John Mitchell at Ardenwood. And Mark Fleming, who's at 12 Acres, and we've been working really closely with him this year. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. You all remember those words of Christ Jesus. It's an amazing promise, isn't it? And how very timely it is that this scriptural message speaks directly to us. I know the fire that came through here last year and through Montecito in Southern California, and then the fire is now burning in Southern California again. That whole concept of having a home that isn't in danger is really, really important. You know, as we look around, I was talking to a friend the other day, as we're looking around the world and seeing news media's reports of floods and tornadoes and hurricanes and fires, earthquakes and what have you, it became really clear to us that there really is no safe place in a material concept of the world, of creation. There just is none. And so if we're going to find safety, we're going to have to find it somewhere else. I'm glad to know that I think Jan may address this, but our lives appear to be governed by chance, but I think we might hear a different message later on this afternoon. So I look forward to that. But I'd like to think just a little bit more about Christ's message of many mansions, because I had that all wrong growing up. I think we agree that Jesus was promising his followers and those who believed on him through all time a home with him in heaven. And also making that promise that we will never be deprived of a place to live. But I thought I should take a closer look at that term mansion because as I said, I was always thinking it was a large, impressive, estate-like place, a grand residence. And I found that was a pretty new definition of mansion. That in the time of the translation of the King James translation of the Bible, the word translated mansion was just like any residence or dwelling place, with the additional implication of permanence rather than transience, characterized by ideas such as stay or remain in, persevere, abide. And surely I thought about that. This makes, in a way, makes Jesus' promise that much more precious, because surely that idea of a permanent residence would be really significant to a people whose defining historical event was 40 years wandering in the wilderness. So that permanent home today is an earnest longing. You can't turn on any news media without seeing people, refugees of all kinds, both at home and abroad, seeking a permanent place to live, a safe place to be. Since its humble beginnings in the home of a devout Christian Science couple, Fern Lodge has provided a secure home to all who come to us for Christian Science nursing care. That same devotion to home and care led our dear friend Agnes Buttle to help to establish Redwood Community here in Santa Rosa for this community too. Just wonderful individuals. We're deeply grateful for the opportunity we have at Fern Lodge now to combine our operations as we maintain each facility its unique place in each community. Fern Lodge and Redwood Community do and will give evidence of that permanence of home. I was thinking also about what do we do there? Along with that idea that we have a permanent home, it's kind of like, that reference is in John 14. And if you look at John 14, it is full of some of Jesus' most comforting and most demanding statements. I recommend you go do it. I don't have time to do it now, but just go through and pick out the number of very, very commonly repeated assurances, both demands on us and promises to us that Jesus makes in that one chapter. One of them is, this one we know so well, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also, and greater works than these." Welcome home. I think of that. I'm going to just go through a few things I think of when I think of home. Our homes is where we put into practice our earnest willingness to seek God by following the Master, not merely in the way, but as the way. Not going where he went, but going in the same manner as he went through the world. Demonstrating the truth of a life hid with Christ in God. Our homes are places where we witness the destruction of the works of the devil. We witness that destruction through Christ, who came to destroy sickness and sin. Our homes are where we heal sickness and disease of all kinds. Our homes are where we overcome sin and temptation, and we help each other to do the same thing. Our homes are where those with a deadened sense of existence and purpose are raised to productive life. Are these homes material, made of wood and stone? Obviously not. We've seen how temporary that can be. They are spiritual and mental, indicating a state of consciousness, a relationship with God. As Mrs. Eddy put it, home is not a place, but a power. And I remember my dear friend Peter Dempsey's here. In 1991, there was a fire in the Oakland Hills. Their home appeared to be gone. I went very soon after that. I kind of sneaked around the police lines and went up to see the house, or where it had been. And while there was, you know what was there, you can see it here. In the place where Peter's home stood was a sign. And it said, I'm going to not get this quite right, maybe Peter will remember. It said, the house may be gone, but our home is intact. And I just love that. Our homes are where the Comforter, the Holy Ghost, or divine science, comes to us, reminds us of the Master's work, teaches us in the way, so we're able to follow his example. And as a result of that, we feel the peace of God, and we have the confidence to go into all the world to help, heal, and save mankind through prayer. It's so important to keep clearly in thought the realization that Fern Lodge and Redwood Community are not providing neat and pretty houses that Christian Scientists can just live comfortable lives in and somehow have people who care for them nicely and they're entertained or even spend their time just reading Christian Science literature. It's important to realize that situation is not a reasonable goal for our residents or for ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Christian Scientists don't deserve safe and comfortable homes. In my Father's house are many mansions. But what I am saying is that Christian Scientists cannot seek out such homes in order to withdraw from following the Master's commands and taking our place as Christian Scientists in a world that needs it so very much today. What are we to be doing in our homes for Christian Scientists? Now, I'm not presumptuous enough to have a full answer to that question. I really don't know. But I have some ideas, and I'm going to share one of them with you. In a letter to the Concord Christian Science Church, which she had helped to build, Mrs. Eddy wrote the following. From the interior of Africa to the utmost parts of the earth, the sick and the heavenly homesick or hungry hearts are calling on me for help, and I am helping them. We know our leader didn't travel to Africa. She didn't travel to much of the earth, very little of the United States. And yet, from her own home, from within her own home, she knew that she could help people around the world. We too can have the same commitment and the same confidence within our precious facility homes, Fern Lodge and Redwood Community. That's what we're there for, healing and saving the world. Well, Fern Lodge and Redwood, you may have heard, but Fern Lodge and Redwood now have the same board of directors. You've met them. We are deeply, deeply grateful. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. To two people who helped us enormously in this time. Seth Dempsey and his wife, Jan. Jan has been absolutely invaluable in being helpful to us, and she will continue to be through the coming years, I'm sure. Work has begun on the house. It's substantially painted inside, fresh coats of paint all around. Next week, we plan to start remodeling a bathroom or two to make it more accessible for people who need nursing services. We don't expect to take a long time with it. There's not a lot that needs to be done, but we want to get on it as soon as we can so that we can open soon. We expect to spend about $100,000 in renovations, so if you want to give a donation for that, we wouldn't turn it down. We'll keep you informed of our progress. It's our sincere hope to have the home open and operating by early next year at the latest, early 2009. Maybe it could be before that, we don't know. And sometime next year we will have a delightful open house and a party, and you'll all be invited back and bring your friends. On one other topic, I'd like to share something with you, and that is, I've mentioned it at the last meeting, and we mentioned it in our newsletter, but I think I want to keep reminding us all of something fairly new in our movement, and that is the National Fund for Christian Science Nursing that began operation in 2017. It provides funds for benevolence, and its help for patients at Fern Lodge has been invaluable, just really amazing. A substantial amount of the benevolence we used to wonder what we would get funds for is now met through payments from the National Fund. That fund helps with benevolence needs for anyone who is receiving Christian Science nursing care, and it will help pay for that cost whether someone's in a facility or in their own homes. It will also help pay Christian Science practitioners' treatments. So it's a really valuable resource in our communities, and it's available across the country. Some of the patients who come to Redwood will qualify for assistance from that fund, I'm sure. So that did make a big difference to us. It turns out that this year, where before we were giving $600,000 to $800,000 in benevolence out of Fern Lodge raised funds, this year we only have to raise $300,000. For me, that really is nice. Anyway, thank you again so much for inviting us here, for letting us speak with you. I know and have known for a long time that the only worthy gratitude we can really give is not the words of thanks, but the continuing to do the works of Christ, to really earn that respect and that confidence that you give us by providing Christian Science nursing care and by healing the sick and sinning. Thank you again and again. And now it is just one happy time for me to introduce a dear, dear friend of mine, the most amazing Christian Science nurse I know, my dear sweet wife, Sharon Strong. She's our Director of Christian Science Nursing Education, and she'll give a report on her activities, and she'll also give a report on behalf of Deanna Proctor, who's our Director of Christian Science Nursing, but who was unable to be here today with us. Sharon.
Technical things. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to add my thanks to you all for giving up a portion of your day to be here. You are the reason we do what we do. You are the reason we strive to be ready whenever and wherever you have a need. This sentiment from First Church of Christ Scientist and Miscellany by Mary Baker Eddy, to me, describes the work of Christian Science nurses. In my thought, I identified the foe as error, as everything opposed to the law of God. She says, "You go forth to face the foe with loving look and with the religion and philosophy of labor, duty, liberty, and love, to challenge universal indifference, chants, and creeds. Your highest inspiration is found nearest the divine principle and nearest the scientific expression of truth. Improve every opportunity to correct sin through your own perfectness. When error strives to be heard above truth, let the still small voice produce God's phenomena." I'd like to start by asking all the Fern Lodge Christian Science nurses to please stand. We just want to make sure that we thoroughly thank them publicly for all of their work. So, Uche, I know we have Uche. You're the only one? It's a long trip. And there are other Christian Science nurses in the audience, like I see Mark and Rachel. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that we don't know about. Hi.
I am from Arnwood.
Nice to be here. I'm glad you're here. And Roseanne, who's also honorable mention as an administrator. Thank you so much for all the work you are doing in each of your fields. So here are just a few highlights of what we have how we have challenged universal indifference, chants, and creeds this past year. And those are by overcoming beliefs of age and inactivity. In our activities and volunteers, I will say department, Robin Barbin, who is not here today, is our activities director, and her trusty sidekick, Marcia. She comes twice a week. They take patients out once a week for lunch, rotating which patients go based on capability and desire to go out. Once a week, Marcia takes a patient to the local swimming pool where she happily does laps for an hour. Twice a week, Marcia reads articles from the Christian Science Monitor and other Christian Science periodicals over our PA system. Dasha, a Sunday school student from a nearby church, volunteers once a week, talking with patients and reading the Bible lesson to those interested in the afternoons after school. And she is very loved. We feel so blessed by all the volunteers who so selflessly come to read at our Sunday and Wednesday church services. And we are also very thankful for our inspired Christian Science practitioners and those who so lovingly serve as our monthly house practitioners. It is a valued and effective support to our healing mission. So all you practitioners out there, thank you. The addition of the smart speaker, Alexa, whom you may have bumped into from time to time on commercials, has made it easier for patients to individualize their Christian Science study. It was the idea of Jamie Stock, who has programmed a speaker for each patient who wants one. With voice commands, they can access programs on the Mother Church website, as well as programs that were previously played on our iPods, such as continuous playing of Science and Health, along with numerous Christian Science lectures, articles, and hymns. So this replaces needing to listen at a specific time to programs on the iPods that were previously broadcast over the PA. And just so you know, I tried asking, Alexa, please write my annual meeting report. But she replied, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. We've seen some wonderful healings this past year that challenge so-called laws of health and recuperation. A patient was admitted after a fall and needed 2 Christian Science nurses to assist her with mobility. She made steady progress and soon was able to return home. A Christian Science nurse went with her to ensure her home was arranged appropriately for her continued progress. Follow-up visits were made and recommendations given to help her feel more safe and confident. A patient arrived from another facility who was not walking or talking. She now walks confidently, enjoys participating in the Joy of Movement classes, and she listens to and engages now in conversations. An elderly patient arrived with one hip set and the opposite elbow in a complicated sling due to injuries from a fall. When she was ready to go home, she was walking briskly in the hall with a walker and using her entire arm with freedom. She conquered her fear of walking outside, practiced walking on stairs, and returned home. Another patient, a patient had been admitted several times over the years with a breathing problem, requested admission, but we didn't have an empty room. Staff lovingly agreed to admit her. So we moved 2 patients into a larger room and gave her the vacated room, which had no toilet or bed. However, this met her need beautifully, as she preferred sleeping in her chair, and there was a toilet in the room next door, in the shower room. When a more normal room became available, she declined to move because she loved that her room faced the morning sun and overlooked the patio with all its cheery flowers. She went home healed after a month. A long-time patient began experiencing difficulty walking. After a few months of focused prayer and attention, she made steady gains until she could stand and walk with her walker. Another patient was confined to bed for a few days and wasn't eating, but in a few days was back up and feeding herself. And then a cleansing and bandaging situation on a patient's tailbone was completely healed. Before I go into the activities in training, I wanted to just mention briefly that we did not participate in International Christian Science Nursing Day when it happened, because the administrator was off somewhere giving a talk, and I was at my association, and our director of Christian Science Nursing was also not available. But I thought you might be interested to know that at my own association, a panel was arranged for 4 of us Christian Science nurses, and we talked for 45 minutes about the different aspects of Christian Science nursing. What is the difference between a Christian Science nurse and a medical nurse? The difference between a Christian Science nurse and a practitioner, and things along those lines. So we were kind of thinking that in one way this meeting would be our International Christian Science Nursing Day participation. We did, however, miss joining in with Ardenwood and 12 Acres in the program that they put out. So that's the end of the Director of Christian Science Nursing report, and I'll talk about activities in training this past year that challenged the traditional concept of where and how to teach Christian Science nursing. Our Ministry of Christian Science Nursing Level 1 class was taught for 2 days a week for 4 months on site at 12 Acres in San Jose. A class of 12 Christian scientists, including the administrator, Mark Fleming, learned regular bed making as well as occupied bed making, lifting, and personal care skills, along with ethics and sound judgment. I still have that picture of you, Mark, getting your face shaved. It was an amazing group of learners who shared their love of the work and learning new skills, their growing inspiration, and their good humor. I mentored a Christian Science nurse again for 2 weeks at Adventure Unlimited camps in Colorado, where she learned to practice sudden needs and adapt her cleansing and bandaging skills. It's always a joy to be in that environment working with children. Another Christian Science nursing facility asked me to teach a class on being a director of Christian Science nursing. So we quickly put that together and then taught it over Zoom in July and August. We were able to accommodate the assistant director of Christian Science nursing who worked night duty, so our class convened from 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. Pacific time. The administrator of that organization also took the class and contributed valuable job knowledge to help them work together better as a team. And we finished that course with me spending a week at that facility mentoring that new director of Christian Science nursing. Recently, our Level 4 Ministry of Christian Science nursing class was taught through video over Zoom for 2 individuals at a smaller facility in the Midwest. We were flexible in meeting schedule needs for that facility, so for the first time ever, we taught for 2 weeks, took 2 weeks off, and just finished teaching the last 2 weeks. Public speaking was a subject they asked to learn. So it was fun for me to put that together and then to watch these women give their final speeches and perform their required 1-hour workshops, thanks to Zoom and the computer. And I should add that we often combine a class at Fern Lodge with classes we have over Zoom, so it isn't just, we aren't just all Zooming. And then in about a week, we will teach and mentor a Ministry of Christian Science Nursing Level 1 class. And in January, we'll do it all over again. So we have a lot of demand for the Level 1 class right now. Will we offer Christian Science nurses training in Santa Rosa? What, would you like that? Well, I thought yes. We would be delighted to teach here, and we have an application and interview process. And with those ready to move forward, we would coordinate schedules to find the best times to teach. Classes could begin at Redwood and also incorporate some mentoring time at Fern Lodge to help develop a more complete range of the nursing skills, judgments, and ethics, which are so vital to the pure practice of Christian Science nursing. So please contact me if you have been cherishing this idea so we can see how to help. And I'll close with this quote, speaking of helping, this quote from our leader from Miscellany. When we are willing to help and to be helped, divine aid is near. So I'm going to step back for a moment. Then I'm going to introduce Jan. Shall I just talk while you get hooked up? Okay. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Jan Holden. Jan grew up in Canada in a family of 5 generations of class-taught Christian scientists. She began her ministry of Christian Science nursing while she was attending Principia College. She worked as a Christian Science nurse for 22 years in many capacities, including Christian Science nursing instructor and acting director of the Nurses Training School at Ardenwood. Since 1999, she has served full-time as a Christian Science practitioner, and she has served in nearly every position in branch church work. Have you been on the grounds committee?
Yes.
Okay. Jan has addressed Christian Science Association meetings in 3 countries. She has worked with several branch churches on church renewal, presented at the Northern California Church Alive Summit we had up in the Sacramento area, and has given annual meetings and inspirational talks, as well as serving as house practitioner for several different Christian Science nursing facilities. Jan lives with her husband, Alan Wiersbe, in Redwood Shores, California, near San Francisco. They are active members of First Church of Christ Scientist Mountain View. Among the many lessons that I've learned from Jan, one of the most valuable was at a time when many Christian Science nurses felt they couldn't pray when they were with a patient. But they had been taught to instantly call the practitioner and step back. She reminded us that whatever comes into our experience, no matter who we are with or where we are, we have a responsibility to correct any and all impositions on our thought. We are always responsible for treating our own thought, and boy, do we ever have lots of opportunities daily within our Christian Science nursing ministries. So thank you, Jan, for that ongoing inspiration. The title of Jan's talk is Change the Notion of Chance.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Hello, dear friends. Thank you so much for your gracious introduction, Sharon. It's always a joy to see you and George again. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to come. I'm so glad to be here in Santa Rosa. It's been quite a while. I can't tell you how happy I am that Redwood Community is reopening, and that it's reopening with the support of Fern Lodge. What a fabulous team that is. I've always loved and appreciated the generous nature of Fern Lodge, and to me this is one more evidence of that. I'm sure it's going to take some work, but I know that the one-mind God will be guiding each and everyone involved in this project, like blending like brother birds, I think is what it's going to be like. When I was teaching Christian Science nursing at Ardenwood, I was praying about how to give my students, my nursing students, an opposite end experience to the wonderful largeness of Ardenwood. I felt all sizes of facilities had great value, and I wanted them to see that. I had started my Christian Science nursing career at Sharon House in Toronto, which was in a large, elegant old home that had been converted into a small nursing facility to meet that community's needs. So when I heard about Redwood Community, I thought this was the perfect answer to my prayers. I would drive the nursing students from Ardenwood to Redwood Community, where they would stay for a couple of days or more, work with the staff, and help them with the care of individuals staying here. Agnes Buttle would always share her story with them of how Redwood Community began, so that they would know that they were part of a special unfoldment of good. Every one of the students loved it here. It's a very special place, as is Fern Lodge. So in preparing for this talk, I asked God what He wanted to say to His children. I was tempted to focus strictly on nursing or on challenges that this community has had, like George has spoken about. But that's not what I heard. So this topic is what I did hear. So this is mine's direct and loving communication to each of you, which you do hear and understand and are a witness to this truth. Our topic for this afternoon, Change the Notion of Chance, is from a sentence in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. Let me read the full quote to you from page 424. Accidents are unknown to God or immortal mind, and we must leave the mortal basis of belief and unite with the one mind in order to change the notion of chance to the proper sense of God's unerring direction, and thus bring out harmony. End quote. In order to have consistent harmony, she's telling us we need to leave the mortal basis of belief about our lives. But she doesn't just tell us what to get rid of. She also tells us what to acquire. It's an exchange program. Exchange the belief in mortality for the truth of our unity with the one-mind God. And that truth means we forever hear mind's unerring direction. By doing this mental activity, increased, certain harmony is the result. By changing this notion of chance, we begin to have a more consistent sense of harmony in our lives, regardless of what we feel we're currently experiencing. And we all want and need that, don't we? The part of this statement I wish to focus on the most is unite with the one mind in order to change the notion of chance to the proper sense of God's unerring direction, and thus bring out harmony. In order to better understand instructions that our leader has given us, like this one, I always like to dig into the definitions of some of the key words. So I looked up the definition of the word notion in Webster's 1828 dictionary, which was the primary dictionary Mrs. Eddy used when she was writing Science and Health. Notion, conception, mental apprehension of whatever may be known or imagined. Notion and idea are primarily different. Idea being the conception of something visible as the idea of a square or a triangle, and notion the conception of things invisible or intellectual. And the synonyms I found were belief, conviction, opinion, impression, perception. So we need to change the perception or conviction of chance. And let's also look at the word chance from the same dictionary. An event that happens without being intended, expected, or foreseen. The effect of an unknown cause, or the unusual or unexpected effect of a known cause. Accident, casualty. An event good or evil, success or misfortune, luck. And synonyms were coincidence, luck, fate, destiny, fluke, serendipity, risk, hazard, random occurrence, something without design. Here are some common phrases we all may have said ourselves or heard others say. Well, that was sure unexpected. Or, oh, that was fortunate. Or, I didn't see that coming. That was lucky. Or, that was bad luck. Or, I know this was the plan, but I sure wasn't expecting these results. Or, I never realized something like this could be caused by that. Or, there's no clear conclusion, so we'll need to draw straws. What's my message in my fortune cookie? Or from a horoscope's prediction, something bad is going to happen to you today. Or even, my timing was off today. Nothing happened when it was supposed to. Or, the computer made a mistake and canceled my reservation and there's no other flights. Or, it's kind of hit or miss in this situation. I'm not quite sure what to do. Has anybody heard any of those? I'm sure there's a few more. So chance then could be the supposition that God is not governing his creation. Or if he is, he's not all-powerful. Or he's not really governing his creation at all times. Or the belief that good can be changed into evil. or that knowing both good and evil might be useful at times, or that coincidences of either good or evil do happen, but we don't know how or why. The Bible and Mrs. Eddy instruct us not to let these suppositions into thought. We need to challenge these temptations with the understanding that God is all in all, the only cause and the only effect, that He is all-powerful, and that when we turn to Him wholeheartedly, we can change this notion of chance to one of harmony. We can trust Him. We make this change by understanding more deeply that God is directing us, and that He is doing so unerringly and continually, and He is bringing out in our thought the understanding of His harmony. And Webster's 1828 dictionary defines unerring as incapable of failure, certain. Even if we're praying each day about a situation, we may still find our thought divided between God's presence and an opposite power. And we may believe that there's still a chance that something could go wrong. We may need to ask Mind God to lead us in examining our thought to see if there is any ungodlike thought that needs to be detected, rejected, and replaced with the spiritual truth. Let's expect good results from this holy work. Then, when a situation arises that needs our prayerful attention, we can be calm and confident that healing will result. We can wholeheartedly trust in God and in His certainty, His reliability, His sureness, His constant, consistent, unerring care of His creation. I'd like for us to take a look at 3 aspects of chance that will give us a deeper understanding of this concept: coincidences, luck, and fear. The first one I'll talk about is coincidences. And one aspect of the notion of chance is the thought of coincidences. Typically, we think of a coincidence as something that just happens randomly. It's a fluke. If it's really good, we'll call it serendipitous. But when you do have a coincidence of good, that is actually evidence that the laws of divine principle God are coordinating goodness and harmony in your thought and experience. Like Moses at the burning bush, you need to stop and take notice of this divine event of good, however small it may seem, and to strive to understand it more deeply. This is what I like to call a Godcidence. At the very least, pause and thank God for the evidence of His goodness governing your life. Sometimes, in what may seem like small evidences of good, God has actually been coordinating all kinds of things for many, many years before, in order for this bit of good to happen just at this moment. And when we leap into this moment of good with both feet, and respond to it and allow it to propel us along with it, doing so will pour out rivers of good on us going forward. During one of these moments, God gave me this lovely law of His. Here it is, and you might want to jot this down. Divine principle love is causing to coincide and to coordinate all right ideas, all right relationships, and all right activities. Let me repeat that one more time. Divine principle love is causing to coincide and to coordinate all right ideas, all right relationships, and all right activities. Isn't that a good one? So because God is coordinating all good, all harmony, all the time, this truth will eliminate fear, evil, sickness, and dis-ease. We need to emerge from the beliefs of chance, luck, accident, injury, and emergency situations, and see and understand the spiritually scientific fact of being. Random occurrences, or fate, or the alignment of celestial bodies cannot and does not govern us. God alone does. So let me share with you an example. When my children were young, one particularly busy weekend was full of appointments, errands, and activities, all organized down to the last minute. I had prayed each morning with the understanding that each activity would be the unfoldment of God's day, full of joy, harmony, and order. I prayed that I would be in the right place at the right time, doing the right activity with the result of harmony. It was wonderful to witness how each minute of the weekend brought an increasing sense of peace and dominion. By Sunday evening, all had been accomplished. While I was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner that Sunday, my young daughter told me from the adjacent dining room that she wanted to spend some time cuddling with me. And then she repeated her request 2 more times. Each time she made her request, I told her that just as soon as I was finished in the kitchen that I would cuddle with her. Well, suddenly, it came very strongly to me that she needed my attention immediately and that I was not to put it off any longer. So I quickly left our kitchen right away and went to her in the dining room next to the kitchen and sat down and brought her onto my lap. The very moment I sat down and she was on my lap, there was a loud explosion in the kitchen, and glass came flying through the air right past where we were sitting. The fluorescent light bulb under the cupboard where I had just been standing right in front of had exploded. Tiny particles of glass were absolutely everywhere in both rooms, most of it looking as if someone had taken a hammer and pulverized it. However, not one tiny piece landed on either one of us. The pathway of the glass went within inches of my feet and blanketed everything in both rooms. God's presence felt very tangible at that moment. My daughter and I rejoiced together at how wonderfully God protects us. Was that just a coincidence that we were protected? No. We had already been witnessing the love and order and harmony in which our weekend had flowed effortlessly, and this moment was no exception. It was clear evidence of God's unerring direction, causing me to be in the right place, at the right time, doing the right activity, with the result of harmony, as I mentioned earlier. God's laws of safety and protection were in operation, and we were blessed. Sometimes a pattern of thought can slide into the repetition of fear, anxiety, envy, frustration, impatience, or anger, and cloud our thinking and obstruct our ability to hear, let alone be obedient to Divine Mind's communications. But all weekend I had worked at uniting with the one mind, and the moment that mind commanded me to move, because I knew that mind's guidance was unerring, it didn't make mistakes. I knew I needed to be immediately obedient, and protection and harmony was the result. Sometimes I may argue twice with mind's direction, but when the same direction comes a third time, I know for sure that it's mind God telling me, and I'd better get on the stick and do it. We can realize that our thinking determines our experience. If we entertain negative thoughts without challenging them, we're going to get a negative experience. But we can change that easily by thinking about what is good. If you need more peace in your life, the Apostle Paul tells us how to do that. He tells us what to think and what the result will be: peace. So from Philippians 4, from the New Living Translation, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts. It's kind of like super glue. Super glue your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. That's Philippians 4, 6-9 from the New Living Translation. So Paul is saying that if you refuse to worry and be anxious, fix and focus your thought on the good, you will feel God's presence, the presence of peace. I'm sure you've all had the experience where it came to you to do something and you might have repeatedly ignored it, or had an opinion that it wasn't a good idea, or thought you'd do it later. I've heard so many people sheepishly tell me about a problem they have and that they repeatedly had gotten a message to do something and they didn't do it, which resulted in the problem. We need to practice, first of all, recognizing God's voice. And secondly, to practice that we're being promptly obedient to what He tells us. As we make this a habit, great blessings will follow. Blessings that become more and more consistent and don't go up and down like a roller coaster or come and go like good luck and bad luck. All right, our second aspect of chance that I want to address is luck. Luck is the temptation to believe that good is limited and that it comes and goes and can't be relied upon. The definition of luck from Webster's 1828 dictionary is luck, or what we call chance, accident, fortune, is an event which takes place without being intended or foreseen, or from some cause not under human control. That which cannot be previously known or determined with certainty by human skill or power. When we consistently turn to the one-mind God for His, her unerring direction, then we don't need or have luck. God is our divine source of good, and God is pouring forth His good that meets our every need. It may seem as though there are causes not under human control, but if we unite with the one mind, we will witness that everything is under God's control. Think of luck as a coin. On one side of the coin is bad luck, and on the other side of the coin is good luck. But with one side of the coin, you automatically get the other side of that coin as well. We can't pick and choose. Wishful thinking has luck at its root. It's thinking that your good is off in the future, or will come only if certain things happen, like, someday when I win the lottery, I'll buy fill in the blank. Or, I wish I had more of this, fill in the blank. Or, wouldn't it be nice if? That pattern of thought is not being grateful for the present good already in your life. Sometimes when we're tempted by feelings of discouragement or discontentment, we may take steps that lead us away from relying on God for our good. Instead, we need to encourage our thought to be grateful for the present good. And as we do it, it opens the way for more good to unfold and flow into our thought and then our experience. We need to melt down this coin of luck with the purifying effects of truth that burns away the toxins and leaves only what is good and pure. God's constant, consistent, ever-presence of good rules our lives in the big picture as well as in every detail, in the infinite as well as the infinitesimal. He specifies every detail of good. I have another example for you. My daughter and I were driving to Yosemite for a camping trip. She was not an experienced driver at that point and had asked me to coach her whenever she drove. She was driving along 4 lanes of expressway, 2 in each direction, separated by a wide grassy boulevard and then a ditch that was in the middle. The traffic on our side was going at a pretty good clip, but it was beginning to slow down for an upcoming traffic light. I noticed that the white truck in front of us had only one tail light working, and it had sunlight shining on it, so I couldn't quite tell when it was off or on, or to know if he was braking or not. So I started looking around the truck to the right and ahead of it for a better assessment of what the surrounding traffic was doing and not just relying on the taillights of the guy in front of me. The thought suddenly and strongly came to me to tell her to put her brakes on and put some more space between us and the truck in front. The instant she did so, a woman in a large black SUV on our right slammed on her brakes. Black smoke started pouring from her tires, and her SUV started snaking back and forth as she tried to come to a stop. The woman seemed to have her vehicle under control, but then, suddenly, with no warning, she blasted across our lane right in front of us in that small space between our car and the white truck in front of us. Her SUV turned sharply and ended up in the ditch in reverse, facing us. I had a quick glance at the woman's face, and I could tell she was really shaken up, but she was okay. The rest of the traffic continued on as if nothing had happened. As we continued to drive on, I tucked her in my prayers, acknowledging that only God's infinitely protective goodness was going on, and that she could feel only peace, gratitude, and joy. We were tempted to brush this off as a fortunate event and focus on our arrival at Yosemite, but it dawned on us that we had just been talking about a friend whose mother had passed on and how she was dealing with grief. We had affirmed just moments before that Mother God was taking care of her, and we now realize that Mother God was also taking care of us at that very moment. It was very clear that if we hadn't put more space between us and the truck in front of us, the black SUV would have slammed into the middle of our car right where I was sitting. So we rejoiced over and over at Divine Love's care for us and for the driver of the SUV and for everyone on the road at that moment. We felt the tangibility of Mother God taking care of us while we were driving, never being absent for even a moment, always watching over and harmonizing her children's activities. And we reaffirmed that as that was God's law in operation for us, the same was true for our friend and for everyone. Was it good luck that we were perfectly positioned just in time? No. Our acknowledgement of God's goodness and our practice of hearing God's communications and being obedient to them brought us into alignment with God's laws of harmony and safety for ourselves as well as for all those around us. The subtle aspect of the belief in luck would have us accept the belief that good is not currently present, but it might be in the future. Anything that would get us to focus on good in the future separates us from God's present goodness, present guidance, and care. We can know that God is present, and so is our good. The third aspect of chance that I want to address is fear. Fear can be a mesmerized, frozen state of thought that allows in doubt, discouragement, and distrust, and sometimes makes us unable to think or act rightly. While being anxious or fearful, it's tempting to think that there's nothing you can do. However, Mrs. Eddy writes in Miscellany, page 211, all that error asks is to be let alone. Even as in Jesus' time, the unclean spirits cried out, "Let us alone. What have we to do with thee?" Never, ever let error alone. Never wait until later to deal with it. Never be passive about praying about a situation. In our textbook, Science and Health, Mrs. Eddy has written sentence after sentence where she instructs us how not to be passive in knowing the truth, particularly on the pages 390s in the chapter Christian Science Practice. Ponder the words she uses, such as dismiss, destroy, demand, disagree, rise in rebellion, blot out, banish, prevent, protest, contradict. And that's just on 2 pages. And elsewhere in Science and Health, she writes on page 495, let neither fear nor doubt. So neither one of them, neither fear nor doubt, overshadow your clear sense and calm trust that the recognition of life harmonious as life eternally is can destroy any painful sense of or belief in that which life is not. Don't let it. Don't let fear, don't let doubt take over your thinking. Rebel. We need to awaken thought from this mesmerism and firmly declare what is true spiritually. Page 275. The starting point of divine science is that God's Spirit is all in all, and that there is no other might nor mind, that God is love, and therefore He is divine principle. we can come to the realization that our lives are not governed by fear or chance, but by the spiritual laws of divine principle love. I like to look at challenges as opportunities of application rather than as problems. These can be seen as opportunities to apply the spiritual truths of Christian Science that we've learned about. Even if it hasn't been foreseen, we can still remain calm and confident in God's unerring guidance that will enable us to freshly view things from God's perspective. All right, I have a third example for you. A number of years ago, my 2 children and a close friend, Roseanne, and I were traveling in Europe for a couple of weeks. We arrived in Venice with great anticipation and were excitedly walking around the very busy St. Mark's Square, popping in and out of the shops. When we came out of one shop, I realized that my daughter wasn't right behind us as I thought she was. So we all went back into the shop, and she wasn't there. Then we went to the last one we were in, and she wasn't there either. And then we went to the next one we were going to go to, but there was no sign of her. So we methodically went to every shop on the square, inquiring if they'd seen an 8-year-old girl with long light brown hair, and no one had. As I walked around, I alternated calling her name or whistling for her with our family whistle, which she had always come for since she was a little wee girl. I was praying that neither one of us could be separated even for a moment from the care of our Father, Mother, God, or from each other. My friend offered to take my son with her to walk around so I could concentrate on praying and finding my daughter. I was so grateful. After about an hour of anxious praying and searching for my daughter, I was starting to get overwhelmed with fear. I decided that I'd had enough of this approach and that I needed to be more radical in my prayers. And I remembered what Mrs. Eddy wrote about fear in Science and Health, page 411. Always begin your treatment by allaying the fear of your patients. That was me. Silently reassure them, myself, as to our exemption from danger. Watch the result of this simple rule of Christian Science, and you will find that it alleviates the symptoms of every dis-ease. If you succeed in wholly removing the fear, your patient is healed. The great fact that God lovingly governs all, never punishing aught but sin, is your standpoint from which to advance and destroy the human fear. I'm going to put a period there. I kind of adjusted things in her statement. I wasn't sick, but I did feel sick with fear and anxiety for her and the possibility of danger. I knew I had to rid myself of fear so I could hear God, and that this fear in me couldn't affect her from hearing God's guidance either. I knew I had to rebel against this. I decided to do the opposite of what you might expect. I sat down on the steps of the square and closed my eyes. I talked to God and said to him, I'm going to sit here until you bring her to me. I'm not even going to open my eyes until you tell me she's here. I'm going to eliminate all fear and listen only to you. We love you, and you love us, and I know you will bring us together. I completely trust you. Thank you, God. So I sat there and prayed, strongly and firmly refuting each fearful thought. Bit by bit, as I affirmed many truths that I knew and was already familiar with, as well as new ones that God gave me, the struggle with fear began to subside, and I could feel more peaceful. A couple of times, though, I thought, I'll just open my eyes for a second and see if she's here yet. No, that was not what I'd said I'd do. I had to eliminate the doubt as well as the fear. So I continued to pray. I had to commit to trusting God wholeheartedly. Finally, after some time, I felt completely happy and peaceful, with no fear and no doubt. Shortly afterwards, I heard the message, "Open your eyes." I looked around, and there was my daughter several yards in front of me, walking away with a young policewoman holding her hand. They must have walked right by me. I whistled. She heard me, turned around and saw me, ran at me with a big grin, and leaped into my arms for the biggest hug ever. The policewoman said to me, "Well, I guess I don't need to ask if you were her mother." That's very evident. I'm so happy for you both. The three of us exchanged our stories, and then my daughter and I quickly reconnected with my son and our friend, who also rejoiced with us, and we continued on our trip. Thank you, Roseanne, for your support that day. Some of the citations I worked with. This one from Science and Health, page 303. Spiritual man is the image or idea of God, an idea which cannot be lost nor separated from its divine principle. I knew she was mind God's idea, and that she could never be lost or separated from her governing divine principle, love. And then from Miscellaneous Writings, page 13. What is it that harms you? Can height or depth or any other creature separate you from the love that is omnipresent good, that blesses infinitely one and all? The answer is that nothing has the power to harm. Nothing can separate us from God's omnipresent love and care, and we can prove it. And I love this bit from 12 Years with Mary Baker Eddy by Irving Tomlinson. Love is a mother tenderly brooding over all her children. This mother guards each one from harm, nourishes, holds close to herself, and carefully leads along the upward way. I knew that mother love was guarding her from harm, holding both of us close to herself, and carefully leading us all along the upward way. How important it is in these situations to turn away from fear and constantly turn to Mind God for guidance and direction. Really closely let Mind God lead you, guide you, teach you, to continually say, okay, God, what now? Okay, God, now what? Over and over until He says it's done. Then we bear witness to God's goodness and unerring direction, resulting in increased harmony for all. And in conclusion, we've taken a deeper look at 3 aspects at the notion of chance: coincidence, luck, and fear. And we've addressed the mortal beliefs behind each one. We cannot be passive about mortal minds' claims of chance, coincidences, luck, accidents, emergencies, injuries, doubt, or fear. We must be firm and thorough in detecting and rejecting every false claim. We replace these false claims with the truth of how God's constant, ever-presence of good rules our lives in the big picture as well as in every detail, in the infinite as well as the infinitesimal. On page 424, Mrs. Eddy writes, we must leave the mortal basis of belief and unite with the one mind in order to change the notion of chance to the proper sense of God's unerring direction, and thus bring out harmony. Thank you for all you are doing to support Christian Science nursing at Redwood Community and for Fern Lodge. And thank you for being such wonderful listeners, all of you.